Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you
Yep.
so much. This session, we are going to, we're very pleased to have Alyssa Hernandez, who's director of the City of Cleveland's Department of Development, give an update on the city's Housing for All initiatives and programs, including home repair and rehab funds, housing gap fund, down payment assistance programs, legal aid, demolition programs, lead-free Cleveland, and so much more. Nearly $100 million in ARPA funds have been allocated by the City of Cleveland to address neighborhood housing issues. I should say good morning. I'm Keith Benjamin, Director of Community Development for the City of South Euclid. I wear two hats. I'm also the mayor of the Village of Bracknell. We're so pleased to have Director Hernandez join us today. Ms. Hernandez oversees the disbursement of both HUD and capital funds in programs targeting homelessness, housing improvement, affordability, and lead abatement. Director Hernandez is a graduate of DePaul University with a bachelor's degree in geography and public policy and is a proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. She earned her master's degree in education policy and leadership studies from Florida State University. And before coming to Cleveland, Director Hernandez served as bureau chief within the Office of Long-Term Resiliency at the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, where she managed several HUD CDBG disaster recovery and mitigation programs and had a combined budget of over $1.7 billion. Time permitting, we'll take questions following the presentation, so please feel free to ask them in the chat box. Director Hernandez, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to meet with us today.
Thanks so much for having me here. It's really a pleasure to have so many of you here online to have this. What I hope will actually be more of a chat. I think I'm happy to present and give some updates, but I always find it really valuable when we can just talk. So I am going to share my screen. If somebody could let me know if you can.
Looks good.
Yes.
Okay.
It's up.
All right. All right. Now let's make sure that I know how to advance. There we go. Okay. So again, very excited to be here. ARPA is this once in a generational opportunity to really have impact on the city of Cleveland. We were blessed to get a lot of dollars, but what that means is that the normal things that cities do every day, we have to keep doing those things. And so when you layer ARPA on top of that, you get to find out some pretty interesting things. So we've had some challenges, but overall, I think that we have done a really good job getting to the point where we are at now. So part of the ARPA dollars is that you are not spent. You have a certain amount of time to spend these dollars. So these are some pretty quick programs to get the dollars out the door, because that is what is most important. I did want to start us off really seated in what community development is for the city of Cleveland. We had been a bit rudderless, and about a year ago, we adopted a new vision that really honed in on this generational wealth, quality neighborhoods, and certainly quality housing. So many, but not all of the housing programs are coming through the Department of Community Development. And those are the programs that I'll be speaking about today. But we also work as an integrated development team with the Department of Planning, Building and Housing, Economic Development, as well as Community Development. So we, under Jeff Epstein, are a group and a cohort that work really closely together, and really all focused on different aspects of housing. So the programs that I will talk about today are here on the screen: home repair and rehab, residential gap financing, Lead Safe Cleveland, legal aid right to counsel for eviction. We have some middle neighborhoods programs, and then I'll talk about our down payment assistance program and where we are in the process. As I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of dollars coming through, and so we have had to staff up to be able to take in these dollars. But I will get to home repair and rehab. So for home repair and rehab, we actually have two programs. We have a citywide program, which as it sounds is citywide, and then we have a Southeast Side specific focus. And so for our citywide, which we got started with a little earlier than the Southeast Side work, we have chosen the partners, Cleveland Housing Network, Cleveland Restoration Society, LISC, as well as Habitat for Humanity. And so these organizations are, we're going to be giving collectively $10 million, granting to these organizations so that they can run different programs. Now, the beauty of having this many partners involved in the programming is that we are able to meet the needs where folks are. So there are some that are going to need full grants. There are some that are going to need some combination of grant and loan programs, and kind of everywhere in between. And so each of these organizations has their own either target population, whether that's geographical or whether it's based on the type of client. But by doing it this way, we have an ability to really, like I said, meet folks where they are and offer not just one program, but a whole suite of programs. Additionally, because all of these funds are coming from the same source, we have a better ability to make sure that these groups are working together and helping that communication across the groups so that we're helping the residents of Cleveland as best as we can. So then on the Southeast Side, the mayor has a priority for the Southeast Side, and so we have taken over the past year. We've got the Southeast Side Promise. And we have been developing some plans with that. We actually had an opportunity to meet with dozens of other cities through the Bloomberg Harvard work, and we were able to be trained and to start this plan for what we want to do on the Southeast Side. So the Southeast Side, as you likely all know, has been underinvested in for a long time. The private sector is not, the market is not working in that area. There's not a lot of activity going on, and so what that means as government is that we have to step up and make sure that we are both pushing the market, but also meeting the needs of the residents as best as we can. So on the Southeast Side, it is also home repair and rehab, and that is targeted for $5 million. You'll see that we're working with some of the same groups as we are citywide, but not all of the same groups. So we are working with Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, Cleveland Housing Network, Concerned Citizens Community Center, and Community Housing Solutions to implement this timeline. So the big question I get on home repair is when can I have access to these dollars, to these programs? And our anticipation, we anticipate that early next year these funds will be available. But we are, currently going through both our government process and also those third-party entities that we're partnering with. They are also gearing up to be able to accept these dollars. What we wanted to make sure was that we had a very clear way for folks to access these dollars. And so each of these programs will have we will have specific guidelines coming out, and you should expect those to see those in early in the next year. Okay, we'll move on to our gap financing program. So this is probably our largest program, and this is one that has garnered a lot of interest. And what I would say that we have actually been most successful in our progress to date. And so this is targeted to developers, so residential developers, and we have $30 million through ARPA alone, and then we've got 17.7 million through Home ARP, which is related but has different requirements. And then we also added in 1.75 million for bond funds. And these were dollars that we would have spent otherwise, but we decided to pool them all together so that we could have a bigger impact. And so as of right now, the funds are actually 96% committed. So these are projects that have been selected. We have gone to council, and we have the ability to close when these projects are able to close. So that means that, and some projects have already started to close. There's 115 units that are currently under construction, with 2.7 million under contract. So we expect that in the springtime, we will have even more units under construction, with about $20 million actually under contract. So the projects have been selected. We are working through the process now, through contracting and getting these deals to close. This is major. So for my team, we typically do about a dozen a year. And so we are a dozen deals or projects a year. And we have, I think we're about 12 times the amount of what we typically do. So this has been transformative for my department as well. We've had to make sure that we're being nimble and being able to be effective and work as quickly as we can, while maintaining that high level of compliance. So some key projects to highlight. We've got the Hawthorne Elementary School. It's a former CMSD site, and that is actually going to bring market rate housing units to a middle neighborhood. And so I assume that this group is pretty well versed in middle neighborhoods, but for those who might not know, middle neighborhoods are those middle neighborhoods, that missing middle that we often talk about, and they are in the city of Cleveland, usually along the outskirts of the city, adjacent to suburbs. And what these middle neighborhoods, they have historically been pretty stable, but since they're not very low income, they haven't had the opportunity for some of those dollars that come in for very low income. But then also the market isn't quite working there either. So what you have is a bit of stagnation. And these are neighborhoods that are really on the bubble. And without intervention, they could go the way of what we call our opportunity neighborhoods, where they're that have a history of disinvestment. And so it is our goal to not let it go that way, but to pull these middle neighborhoods to make sure that we're meeting their needs as well. The market takes care of one side, and we have programs that take care for the very low income, but then that middle is really missing. And so we want to be able to have programs that are helping those neighbors as well. And the reality is every neighborhood has needs. We just have to make sure that we are addressing those in a different way. And these folks need a little something different for middle neighborhoods. So we also have Garrett Square, which is 49 units of affordable senior housing. And that is also important. We know we have an aging population nationally and here in Cleveland as well. And so this senior affordable housing is going to be transformative for those folks in that nearly 50 units of senior housing, and that's located in the Glenville neighborhood. Also in Glenville, we have 66 units of affordable housing through the Amesbury Roseland project. So we still have work to be done. We've got some outstanding decisions that we are in talks with City Council and trying to push through the last of these projects so that we can get all of these dollars out the door, because it is better in somebody else's hands than just sitting and waiting to be spent. So we are working to make sure that we're finishing this up, but we are very proud of the 96% of the dollars are already committed. That's a huge deal for us. Happy to talk through that later as well in question and answer. We also have 2 programs that help small and minority developers. And so the first is with Cleveland Development Advisors, and they have a $2.5 million budget to provide small, minority, and women developers access to flexible capital as well as technical assistance. And so that is going to happen through loan amounts or through loans that range from $250,000 to $1 million, and then grants up to $25,000. So this program is currently, they've actually selected their first cohort, and so they are actively working with these individuals as and really helping them to scale up. So and in each of the members of that cohort that they've selected have to have a project that they're working through. So it's not theoretical, it is actually tied to a project. So we're excited for the work that Cleveland Development Advisors, that CDA is able to do with that $2.5 million. We also have Village Capital Corporation, and they are similarly, they've got some capital as well as some financing that they're able to do. But again, the real value is with the training and the technical assistance and that peer mentoring and peer support that's happening. So that is also incredibly important. And Village Capital Corporation is really helping again, folks to scale up. And so this is focused more on the contracting side rather than the developer side, but super exciting programs that are currently getting underway. All right, moving to Lead Safe Cleveland. So this is actually one of our largest buckets because we know lead is such a big deal in Cleveland, and the impacts to our children are just incredible. So with that, we have a $17 million commitment to Lead Safe Cleveland, and that is split in a couple different ways. There's 13 million that are going to the Lead Safe Coalition, and that is through the fiscal agent Mount Sinai, and then Enterprise Community Partners are actually managing that program. We also put aside $3 million though for community development for lead grants. So right now, the city of Cleveland has 3 HUD grants that are focused on remediation, lead remediation. But HUD comes with a lot of requirements. And one of those and one of those rules that we must follow is the cap at how much we're able to spend. And so nationally, HUD has decided that cap is about $20,000. Well, our homes in Cleveland are they're older and they're often larger, and then therefore require additional dollars. So this gives us the ability to complete projects beyond having to go through HUD to ask for exceptions. So in our communities that are hardest hit by lead, like Glenville, we're able to add on and layer on additional dollars, and these dollars are a bit more flexible so that we can just finish the project and do the right thing, right? Make sure that we're covering all the needs that we can through these projects. So we are actively engaged with the coalition, as well as administering our HUD grants. And what this $17 million does for lead, it goes from the whole spectrum of lead. So I like to talk about how the coalition works at one side of the spectrum, and it's about prevention, it's about early intervention, and then we have, once a child is poisoned, and then we have to deal with the actual the home. And so we've got that deep end, and that's really where our department comes in to help address that full lead remediation. Our next program that I will talk about is legal aid. And so this is right to counsel for eviction. One of our most successful programs. We have a great partner in legal aid. And there's $1 million that we have put aside. And council has also made additional commitments for right to counsel. This is a program that we see working, and again, incredible partners. Really nice to see the progress that they've made and the real deep impacts that legal aid has had in our community. Okay. And then we have a few programs that I am gonna sort of wrap up. So we're currently in the, I'm gonna go back to my last slide, sorry. We are currently in the process of developing what our down payment program is going to be in the city of Cleveland. And so we are working right now with, we've identified partners, and we're working through what that's going to look like so that we can bring that really critical down payment program that will likely be focused on our middle neighborhoods. And so we're currently in the process of developing that program now, and hope to be making some announcements first or second quarter of the new year, where we can help folks get actually into houses. So all in all, we like to talk about ARPA as being one of many tools that we have at our disposal to help encourage housing growth. We need more housing, and we need quality housing. And so through home repair, through getting new units online, through transforming old school sites into residences for the elderly population, all of these things combined are what's necessary to chip away at the issue. Now, I do have to acknowledge and note that all of the over $500 million that the city of Cleveland received for ARPA in total, all of that could have gone to housing. That is just the reality. The housing need is so large, and again, I believe with this group, I'm likely preaching to the choir here, but this is such a tremendous need. And what we really need, though, is we need participation from outside of the government. So our job is to go in first, to create a pathway and to help make it as easy as we can to promote housing. But the reality, again, is that we need our banking partners to lend more. We need to address appraisal bias. There are all of these other factors that are deeply that deeply affect housing, and we can't go at it alone. And so even with all of these dollars, even if we are 100% successful with all of these ARPAs, we still will only be starting to chip away at this tremendous problem. What we have to do is we have to grow the pot. We have to get additional dollars in. One of the factors that was critically important as we selected partners for this work was leveraging dollars, right? If Are we turning that $1 million of city investment into $4 million of private investment, of philanthropic investment? And so that is all of the partners that we selected, we had that in mind. How can we really use this as an incentive to grow that pot? I have talked long enough about all of these programs, and so now would really like to hear from you all, and I think we can go into question and answer.
Great, thank you, Director. We'll move on to some of the questions that are in the chat. I think we have about 10 minutes remaining. So please, if you have a question, please type it in the chat. If you are referring to a specific program, please also put that in there so we can address that as well. Sorry, I'm getting messages here. The first question is regarding the term Southeast Side, and I believe this referred to probably one of the first slides for the rehab program. Southeast Side is used a lot, but it does not include the neighborhood that had the highest foreclosure rate in the country in 2007, Slavic Village. And actually, I lived in Slavic Village, North Broadway, back in 2007-8. At Monday's council meeting, on the agenda is a robust and well-deserved list of ARPA funding housing projects, but none in Slavic Village. So the question is, how were the Southeast Side neighborhoods selected?
Thank you for that question. So we know the city as a whole has a tremendous need. The theory of starting on the Southeast Side was that the Southeast Side is actually so broad that we needed to really narrow it down. And our commitment is really about where are we going to start? We have to start somewhere. And so when we say Southeast Side, we are talking Union Miles, Mount Pleasant, and Lee Harvard. Those three communities, which span 3 wards, are that's where we are starting this work. There have been previous administrations and decisions that we often use the phrase they spread it like peanut butter, and I like to say it's more like chunky peanut butter, because then there's always these holes in these pieces, and folks are missed, and that is a way to do it. You can split something 17 ways, or you can be strategic. And so what we have through the work of the Bloomberg Harvard cohort that we're a part of, we have had to make hard decisions about what exactly do we mean, where are we going to start this work, where are we going to target these investments, and so after deep deliberation, we decided those three neighborhoods is where we're going to start. But even deeper is that we still can't cover those neighborhoods. Again, about this idea of we have to grow the pot. There's still not enough to really address the full needs. So we're starting even smaller than those 3 neighborhoods, and the city has identified micro geographies that are based on these key corridors, and then the blocks that surround them. And so that's where we're actually starting the work. What we want to see is the markets move, and in order to do that, you have to be really strategic about starting from areas of relative strength and then those targeted interventions can help to transform a place. But if we, that's a policy choice, and is a hard choice, as I was part of that Southeast Side working group. But there is just not enough to go around at this point. But what we hope to do is learn as much as we can from the work on the Southeast Side, and then transition that to other neighborhoods.
Thank you. And I think the next question you've addressed already regarding how the first projects going forward, not including any funds for the high priority Southeast Cleveland neighborhoods. The question is, what has happened and by whom to bring about projects like those in the Southeast wards?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. I'll read the entire question. What factors entered into decisions that led to the first projects going forward, not including any funds for the high priority Southeast Cleveland neighborhoods? What has to happen and by whom to bring about projects like these in the Southeast wards?
Yeah. So I'll try to address that question. What our theory on it is that when we start, then we're able to really spark what we hope to be a catalyst for additional growth. And so we know that in these neighborhoods where the market is not working, that we've got to do more. We've got to push harder and quicker and more boldly, so that then we can attract additional dollars and partners. And so that is what I think the question is, what has to happen in order to get these Southeast Side communities to get started, and that's the work that we're doing right now, which is we have to start, we have to be bold, and we have to be strategic and targeted, so that we can really show movement.
Next question is from Phil Starr. What are the programs for very low income, less than 30% of AMI in the Housing for All initiative, and how many of 541 are affordable?
So we have that in the gap financing program, there are a few different buckets, but we do have a specific bucket that addresses the very low income at 30% and under. Now, what I will say is that we had a tremendous amount we had a tremendous response to our RFP for gap financing. We were oversubscribed, by a lot. The area that we were not oversubscribed in was for that very low income. And really, those projects are sometimes the hardest to develop, and those projects have a lot of requirements, and then are therefore less attractive for developers to use those dollars. So we were not surprised. Our theory on it has been, we're going to try to if we can make a project fit into that model, and that pencils out for that developer, we want to obviously use those more restricted funds, and then save the other types of projects for a less restrictive bucket.
Thanks. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left on this panel. There's a few questions left. We'll try to get through them pretty quickly here. What are your thoughts on the EPA's proposal to go lead-free over the next 10 years? Economic and health impact locally.
Yeah. So that is not something that I am intimately familiar with. My role in lead in community development is really on that home repair and rehab side. So I can't comment on that. What I'll say about lead is that we have a large coalition. We're taking an all of government approach to addressing lead. And so we have leadership within the Department of Building and Housing, as well as health is also involved, right? Dr. Margolius and his team's leadership in addressing lead, as well as our partnership with the Cleveland Lead Coalition.
There's another question here. Who are your DPA partners? We've heard you're seeking out-of-state partners while the region already has stakeholders willing and able to collaborate. Could you speak to that a bit?
Yes, so we are planning to work with CHN. We are very early in conversations, but that is the partner that we are planning to work with, primarily because as the commenter mentioned, they're already really, there is some of this work is already happening, and our goal is not to not to upend or to compete. We want to go ahead and not reinvent the wheel, and where something is working, we want to help support that. But we also have initiatives that we want to focus on in target, and so that's where this middle neighborhood version of down payment is coming from. The great thing about CHN is that they're willing partners in this process to help develop, to co-develop a program that is really going to work for us. So excited to announce more about that later, but we are still in pretty early phases of that.
Okay, we'll roll with one last question here. We've got about a minute left. Is there any gap funding going to small developers trying to renovate houses where the after rehab's value will be less than the cost to rehab? Will the 1.75 million bond funds be used for this purpose?
So yes, we do have a program that is targeted towards that, and that is through those two partners that I spoke about earlier. And so there is some, we're seeding some dollars with our partners with New Village Capital, which is a CMP organization, Cleveland Neighborhood Progress Organization, and then as well as CDA. So yes, we will have those dollars will be used to help support the developers in their cohort for those, to help support those smaller developers. The reality is we have a tremendous need for developers, and so we needed to put some dollars aside to help give technical assistance and help these small minority business owners the ability to scale up and to be able to one, help us solve this housing crisis that we have within the city of Cleveland, but two, there is a way for them to also benefit financially. We have many funds, and we have the problem, and we really just need to make that connecting piece so that they have access to getting some of those contracts. And so we are continuing that work both with those ARPA dollars, but then also independent of those ARPA dollars, we're having lots of technical assistance. We are meeting on a weekly basis with contractors to help get them into the fold so that they can help, put hammer to nail and help us with these home repair projects as well.
Great. Well, that just about wraps up our time. Director Hernandez, thank you so much for presenting an update on Cleveland's Housing for All initiatives. We appreciate having you here with us today. We are now going to move into a 10-minute break, and we'll be back with the next session in a few minutes.
Thanks so much for having me, y'all.